The moment the Merlot hit his shirt, she laughed too hard. Not a polite laugh. Not a whoops laugh. A deep, full-body laugh that made her clutch her ribs and lean into his shoulder like they'd shared the same inside joke for years. That was when I knew. It wasn't the lipstick on her wine glass, or the way she didn't notice I was watching from across the rooftop. It wasn't even how close their knees were under the table. It was the laugh. That stupid, too loud, too familiar laugh. Like he was the one who knew how to pull it out of her now. The work party was supposed to be her night. She said I didn't have to come. Too many boring people, she joked. But I came anyway, showing up late in a wrinkled button-up with a half-wilted bouquet of gas station carnations. I stood near the elevators for almost 7 minutes before I worked up the nerve to step out onto the patio. That's when I saw them. Darren. I only learned his name later. Had one of those smug, forgettable faces that people either adore or ignore. She adored him. Her body language screamed it. She tilted toward him like a sunflower tracking light. I watched for too long. Way too long. Then, as if she sensed me, she glanced over, made eye contact, and smiled. Not guilty. Not surprised. Just amused. As if I'd caught her mid-prank. As if I was the clueless straight man in her personal sitcom. I should have turned around and left then. Should have saved myself the self-inflicted humiliation. But I didn't. I walked over. She didn't stand up. Didn't introduce me. Just looked up and said, "Oh, I thought you weren't coming." I looked at the guy. He looked at me. And then she added it, the line. "He's just a friend from the office." Boom. Like a trap door opening under your feet in a dream. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat tightened, and all I could hear was my own heartbeat. The rest of the night was a blur. I stood by the appetizer table eating room temperature shrimp and pretending to check sports scores on my phone. She never came back over. By the time I made it to the parking garage, my resignation email was already typed in my notes app. I didn't even work with her. I just couldn't stand the idea of showing up to my job while she went to hers, pretending to be in love with me at home and just friends in front of everyone else. That night, I packed a bag. I didn't even take the good towels. I left her a note on the fridge. "I'll come back for barley on Tuesday. You'll know why." Spoiler, she pretended not to. But I'll explain that later. This whole thing goes deeper than I thought. And if you think it ends with spilled wine and awkward eye contact, you're dead wrong. Tuesday came, and I was a wreck. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours since I walked out. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Not crying, not confused, just blank. Like someone hit reset on her emotions. She didn't call me, didn't text, nothing. The silence was louder than any argument we ever had. And that scared me more than if she'd screamed. I went back to the apartment around noon. Not because I was ready. I wasn't. But because I'd promised I'd come for Barley, our cat. He was never really hers, even though she picked his name. He slept on my chest every night, not hers. He waited by the door when I came home, not her. I told myself I was just coming to get him. Quick in, quick out. I brought a cardboard box and one of his toys, the stupid green mouse with the missing tail. When I walked into the building, everything felt off. The lights in the hallway buzzed louder than usual. The air smelled faintly of burnt toast. My key still worked, which made my stomach sink. I guess I expected her to change the locks. I pushed the door open slowly. The first thing I noticed was the smell, her perfume. Too much of it, like she'd sprayed it to cover something up. Then I saw the wine glasses. 2 of them, on the coffee table, with red smudges on both rims. And a jacket, a man's jacket. It was draped over the back of the chair I usually sat in, my chair. I stood there, frozen, 1 foot still halfway out the door, holding a box with a dumb stuffed mouse inside, while my insides went cold. I didn't call her name. I didn't want her to come out. I didn't want to see her face, or worse, his. I walked straight to the bedroom. The bed was made, but on her nightstand was a bracelet I'd never seen before. Thick, black leather, definitely not hers. And under the pillow, not even hidden well, was a receipt. One of those crumpled, thermal ones from a hotel minibar. I didn't take it. I didn't need to. I already knew. I found Barley hiding in the closet. He came out when he heard my voice, tail down, ears twitching. I scooped him up, kissed his head, and whispered, "I'm sorry, buddy. I should have taken you with me the first time." As I turned to leave, the bathroom door opened. She stepped out, hair wet, bathrobe, no makeup, and yet she looked calculated, like she'd rehearsed this moment in her head. "You're early," she said, as if I'd just crashed a meeting. My throat closed. Who's here? She blinked, tilting her head. What are you talking about? The wine glasses. The jacket. The smell of cologne. She crossed her arms, her voice sharp. Jesus, Emery. Are you serious right now? You disappear for a week, leave some cryptic note, and now you're playing detective? I told you I'd come back today. For him. I nodded toward Barley, who was curled in my arms like a baby. She rolled her eyes. You didn't even text. I shouldn't have to, I muttered. There was a pause. Then she said it, casual, like she was stating the weather. He stayed over because I had a panic attack. I didn't want to be alone. But nothing happened. Who? She hesitated. Darren, she said, finally. He's just a friend, Emery. That was the second time she used that line. I didn't respond. I just turned and walked out. But as I stepped into the hallway, I heard a voice inside the apartment. A man's voice. Low. Laughing. She hadn't even bothered to close the bathroom door all the way. And that laugh? It wasn't friendly. It was intimate. The kind of laugh that comes after someone whispers something into your neck at 2 a.m. I didn't turn around. I didn't slam the door. I didn't make a scene. But something inside me cracked wide open. And what happened next? Well, let's just say the worst thing you can do to someone isn't scream at them. It's vanish. I didn't go back to my cousin's house that night. I just drove. No GPS. No destination. Just miles and miles of bitter air and engine noise and the constant echo of his laugh in my skull. I ended up in a Walmart parking lot on the edge of town, parked between an abandoned shopping cart and an overflowing trash bin. I sat there for hours with Barley curled in the passenger seat, blinking slowly like none of this surprised him. At 3 a.m., I did something stupid. I opened our shared bank app. I'd avoided it for days. We never had much, but enough to get by. I didn't expect to see anything major. But the transaction history was louder than any voicemail. Friday night, $126, hotel downtown. Not the same hotel from her work event. A different one. One I didn't even know she knew existed. Saturday morning, $14. 73, 2 lattes and a ham croissant at a coffee shop near the river. Sunday evening, $87, wine bar. 2 glasses of something fancy and an appetizer I couldn't pronounce. All on the joint account. All while I was gone. I should have taken my name off the lease the moment I left. Instead, I stared at those transactions like they were mugshots. The next morning, I walked into the rental office with a hoodie that hadn't been washed and a headache that pulsed behind my eyes like a warning light. The leasing agent, Janine, was this sweet older woman who always smelled like cinnamon gum. She looked up and said, "Oh, Emery, how's that cat of yours?" I forced a smile. "He's all right. I'm not staying, though. Just need to take my name off the lease." She frowned. "Everything okay?" "Not even close." I signed the paperwork, handed her my keys, and walked out feeling like a ghost, like I'd just erased myself from the story of my own life. Later that day, I got a text from Lynette. "Really? You couldn't even have a conversation like an adult?" That was the first thing she said to me in 3 days. No apology. No explanation. No, I miss you. Just passive-aggressive blame. I didn't answer. She followed up with, "You're being dramatic. It wasn't even like that." That made me laugh. Actually laugh. Out loud. In the middle of a dirty laundromat with strangers around me. If it wasn't like that, then why did she hide everything? Why the late nights, the deleted messages, the second wine glass? Why the bathrobe lie and the man's jacket left out like a dare? I was losing my mind trying to connect dots that didn't even need connecting anymore. I had all the pieces. I just didn't want to admit what they formed. I kept thinking about something Darren said at the rooftop party when I was standing awkwardly near the balcony, pretending to look at the skyline while actually watching them through the reflection in the window. He was telling a story about some failed client pitch, and when he reached the punchline, Lynette slapped his arm and said, "You're impossible." I remember that phrase because she used to say it to me when we were first dating, in that flirty, half-serious way like I was charming and stupid in hers. But that night, when she said it to Darren, her voice cracked in the exact same spot it used to when she said it to me. And that's the part that gutted me. It wasn't just that she cheated. It was that she recycled everything. The lines, the laughs, the gestures. Like I'd been nothing more than a rough draft, and he was the polished version. That realization made something snap. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight for her. I wasn't going to scream, or beg, or demand closure. I was going to do the one thing she never expected. I was going to vanish completely and make her feel irrelevant. I changed my phone number the next morning. I deleted our shared Google Calendar, disconnected my Spotify account from the home speaker, and canceled the Netflix subscription. Not out of pettiness, but because I realized how much of me she still had access to. And I wasn't hers anymore. But just as I started to breathe again, to feel a sliver of control returning, I got a call from an unknown number. No voicemail. Then another. Then a message from a random account on Facebook with no profile picture. You need to stop. You're embarrassing yourself. That's when I realized it wasn't Lynette. It was him, Darren. And that's when things got even worse. I didn't reply. I stared at the message. You need to stop. You're embarrassing yourself. And something about the way it was phrased made my teeth clench. He didn't say stop texting her, or stop showing up, or even stay away. Just stop. As if I were some child having a tantrum in a grocery store. As if my pain was inconvenient to him. I checked the account. No friends. No posts. The profile picture was that generic gray silhouette. But the grammar, the sentence structure, it reeked of someone trying to sound calm while holding a knife behind their back. So I blocked it. Not even 30 minutes later, I got an email. Not to my main account, to the backup one. The one I used for old newsletter signups and job alerts. Nobody had that email. Not even Lynette. Except, one time, years ago, she borrowed my laptop while hers was dead. That account had auto-filled. I never thought anything of it. The subject line was blank. The message was short. Your middle name is Gordon. That's a terrible name. Just thought you should know. I felt it like a slap. Not because of the insult, I've heard worse, but because he knew it. Darren, the man she said was just a friend. He knew my middle name. Something I'd only ever told Lynette during one of those weird early relationship talks where you share all the useless trivia no one else cares about. It was small, but it was personal. And it was a message. He wasn't just screwing my wife. He was trying to crawl inside my head. And it was working. I barely slept that night. Every sound outside made me twitch. Every car door slam felt like someone coming for me. I wasn't scared of him, exactly, not physically, but emotionally, psychologically. He was poking at places I didn't know were still raw. I started spiraling, rereading old texts between me and Lynette, analyzing her wording, looking at timestamps, noticing things I should have seen months ago, like the text from January where she said, Darren helped me carry the projector, lifesaver LOL. Or the one from March, he's harmless. Total nerd. She'd laid the foundation so casually. Meanwhile, I was defending her to my own friends. I remember once, over beers, my buddy Kyle said, You sure she's not into that guy? You talk about him a lot. I'd laughed. Said, Lynette's not like that. God, I feel stupid. The next day, I did something I'm not proud of. I created a fake email. Sent Lynette a message pretending to be a recruiter. Said I was following up on her recent hotel stay and wanted feedback. I used the exact address from the receipt I found under the pillow. She replied, Hi. Sorry, I think you've got the wrong Lynette. That was it. No confusion. No follow-up. No, I didn't stay at a hotel. She knew what I was doing. She knew it was me. And she was mocking me. Silently. Professionally. I should have let it go. Moved on. Started fresh. I had no lease, no job, no obligations. I could have gone anywhere, been anyone. But instead, I found myself doing something worse. I went back to the apartment building. Not inside. I wasn't that far gone. I just parked across the street and waited. Like a creep. Like a sad, washed-out ghost of a husband who still hadn't accepted the divorce papers hadn't even been filed yet. At 6:42 p.m., she came out. Hair up. Same black coat she used to call her city armor. She was on the phone, smiling. And then he stepped out behind her. Darren. Wearing my old denim jacket. That was the moment. Not the kiss. There wasn't one. Not the hand-holding. They didn't. Just that jacket. I knew it was mine because it had a little tear near the left cuff. A stupid snag from when I got caught on a fence helping her neighbor pull his dog back in. He was wearing my past like it belonged to him. And she let him. That's when I realized something terrifying. They weren't just having an affair. They were erasing me. Quietly. Piece by piece. And I was letting them. But not anymore. I don't know what I thought would happen. That maybe they'd break up? That maybe he'd get bored with her? Or she'd feel guilty enough to crawl back? That some twist of karma would kick in and balance the scales? But nothing happened. They kept living. Together or not, I couldn't tell. But he was there. At least 3 nights in a row, I saw him enter her building around 7 p.m. and leave sometime after midnight. Not always holding anything. Sometimes carrying a small duffel bag. Sometimes nothing at all. Once, he brought Thai takeout. I know because I zoomed in and read the logo on the plastic bag. Yes, zoomed in. I had started taking pictures. From the parking lot across the street. From behind the bush near the bike rack. From my car, angled just enough not to catch glare off the windshield. I told myself it wasn't stalking. That I wasn't doing anything illegal. That I was just documenting. Preserving something real before it got twisted further by lies and silence and gaslighting. Because Lynette was still pretending nothing was wrong. She posted a story on Instagram that same week. A photo of her coffee, a slice of pie, and the caption, "Solo Sundays are sacred sparkles." But I had a picture from that exact day, time-stamped, of Darren exiting her building with his shirt untucked and her cardigan slung over his shoulder. Solo Sundays, my ass. I almost sent it to her. Drafted the message. Attached the image. Even typed, "You dropped this." But I didn't hit send. I knew what she'd say. Something cold. Something logical. Something rehearsed. Like always. So instead, I printed the photo. On real glossy paper. I don't know why. Maybe it felt more real that way. I pinned it to the inside of my notebook and sat in a diner until 2 a.m., staring at it while Barley meowed from his crate under the table, confused and hungry and tired of me dragging him from place to place like a fugitive's pet. The next morning, I checked my email and found something that made my blood run cold. A calendar invite. From Lynette. Subject line, closure. Location, the cafe on 4th and Alder. Neutral ground. The place where we had our first real fight. The one about my mom visiting too much and her feeling like a guest in her own home. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't want her to know how fast my heart was beating, how dry my mouth went reading her name again. But I accepted the invite. I even shaved for it. She was already there when I arrived. Sitting outside, wearing that same black coat. She stood when she saw me, and for a second, I thought she might hug me. But she didn't. Just gestured toward the metal chair across from her like a hostess seating a stranger. We sat. Silence. Then she said, "You look tired." I stared at her for a full 10 seconds before answering. Whose idea was the email from Darren? I asked. She blinked. What? The message. About my middle name. Don't play dumb. I know it was one of you. Her jaw tightened. Emery, I don't even have your backup email. Liar. I'm not lying. More silence. Then, something in her face shifted. Almost pity. Almost irritation. He's not who you think he is, she said finally. And I'm not who you think I am, either. That sentence was a knife. But the way she said it, like she was breaking character, made my skin crawl. I leaned forward. Are you living together? No. Sleeping together? A pause. Does it matter? Yes. God, yes. But I didn't say that. Instead, I asked something else. Did you ever actually love me? She didn't answer. She just reached into her purse, pulled out a manila envelope, and slid it across the table. Inside were copies of every signed paper from our lease, a few printed emails between her and the landlord, and a post-it note in her handwriting that read, "I'm not erasing you. I'm letting you go." I didn't touch the envelope. I just stared at it. And then she got up and walked away. No hug. No final glance. Just footsteps fading. But the weirdest part? The waiter came over 5 minutes later with a second coffee and said, "Your friend paid for yours already. And she left something for you." I thought it was a note. It wasn't. It was a photo, printed on glossy paper, of me, taken from across the street, outside her building. She knew. The whole time. She knew. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the dark with the photo in my hand. The one of me outside her apartment, taken from an angle I couldn't trace. Not from a phone. Not from a security camera. The resolution was too clean, the composition too deliberate. It felt like someone had framed me the way a hunter frames prey in a scope. Centered. Isolated. Vulnerable. Barley meowed around 3 a.m. I fed him without looking away from the image. She knew. Lynette had known I was watching. She knew the exact nights I was there, the angles I stood at, the times I drove past slowly with my headlights off. And she didn't stop me. She didn't call the cops. She didn't scream or send a cease and desist. Instead, she left a photo like a breadcrumb, like she wanted me to know that she knew, and that knowing wouldn't save me. I started shaking. Not from fear. From humiliation. Because somewhere deep down, I realized she wasn't scared of me. Not even a little. To her, I wasn't dangerous. I wasn't threatening. I was pitiful. A man unraveling in the rearview mirror of her life. Barely worth locking the door for. That hit harder than anything else. The next morning, I called a therapist. The number was on a flyer I grabbed weeks ago at a gas station, right after I moved out. The kind of paper with tear-off tabs and Comic Sans font. It looked like a scam, but at that point, I was desperate for someone to hear me say things out loud. The receptionist booked me for Thursday. I didn't even ask the cost. That same day, I walked into a pawn shop with my wedding ring and walked out with a cheap secondhand DSLR camera. I don't know why. Something about the physical act of focusing, adjusting, clicking. It gave me control, or at least the illusion of it. I started photographing strangers. Faces, windows, shoes. I told myself I was documenting detachment, but deep down I knew I was just replacing one obsession with another. And then it happened. I was standing outside a CVS on a foggy afternoon, lining up a shot of two pigeons fighting over a discarded protein bar when I saw him. A man across the street, leaning against a lamppost, pretending to scroll through his phone. But every 30 seconds, he glanced up at me. At first, I thought it was just paranoia. Maybe I was projecting. God knows I'd spent enough time watching people from shadows. But when I turned to leave, he shifted, too. Just slightly. Like a ripple in water. I crossed the street. He turned away. I followed him for 3 blocks. Not fast. Just close enough to track his pace. He passed a bakery, a liquor store, a dry cleaner, then cut into an alley. When I rounded the corner, he was gone. Completely. No door open. No movement. Just the quiet sound of a dripping pipe and the faint smell of trash. But then I looked down, and I swear to God, I'm not making this up. I saw a coffee cup on the ground, branded with the logo of the cafe where I'd met Lynette for closure. Fresh, still steaming, and written on the cup, in black Sharpie, was a name. Gordon, my middle name. The one only Lynette and Darren knew. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. Every sound in the alley suddenly sounded sharp. The buzz of a neon sign. The rumble of a distant train. My own breath. I don't know how long I stood there. But when I finally got back to my car, the passenger side window was down. I never left it open. There was nothing missing, but on the passenger seat was a folded piece of paper. No envelope. No name. Just a single sentence, typed in bold black font. You're not the only one watching. That night, I slept in a motel 2 towns over. Barley hated it. So did I. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that man's face, or what little of it I'd caught. Pale, sharp-jawed, hoodie pulled too tight. He looked familiar. Not in a I know that guy way. In a mirror way. In a sickening way. Like if you asked a stranger to describe me from memory, and they recreated a slightly wrong version. Close, but not quite. The next morning, I opened my laptop and searched every social media platform I could find. For Lynette. For Darren. For anything tagged near that cafe. And that's when I saw it. Buried in a carousel of images from some influencer's brunch was a background figure. Blurry. Out of focus. But there I was. Sitting alone at the cafe. Holding the envelope Lynette gave me. Looking small. And behind me, 2 tables away, sat a man in a black hoodie. With a DSLR camera in his lap. I stared at that image for hours. Zoomed in. Zoomed out. Cropped it. Adjusted the contrast. Tried to sharpen the shadows around the man in the hoodie, but it was just blurry enough to keep his face hidden. His posture, though, his build, his hands, too familiar. It was like looking at myself with just enough distortion to make it uncanny. Like one of those AI-generated deepfakes, close enough to fool the eye, but wrong in the soul. I showed it to my cousin that night. Didn't say much. Just asked, "Who does this look like to you?" He studied it, squinting. "You," he said finally. "Or your brother, maybe?" "I don't have a brother." I couldn't sleep again. I kept going back to that moment outside the CVS. The way the man moved, the way he disappeared. The coffee cup, the name, the message. You're not the only one watching. That line stuck with me, because it wasn't a threat. It was a mirror, a reminder, a cruel joke. I had spent so long watching Lynette, watching Darren, watching their lives unfold from across streets and behind bushes, and now someone was watching me. Not to warn me, not to stop me, but to let me know I wasn't invisible. I was being documented the same way I documented them. And maybe I deserved that. But it got worse. The next day, I saw him again. Not in person, on video. I was scrolling through Reddit, mindlessly, trying to distract myself. And then I landed on a local subreddit. Someone had posted a funny interaction between a guy and a cashier at a bookstore downtown. The video was taken from behind a shelf, shaky, phone quality. But in the background, walking past the register, I saw a man who made my heart stop. Same build, same slouch, same limp in the left knee I got after that bike accident 2 years ago. Same haircut I'd given myself in the mirror with kitchen scissors 3 weeks ago. Same jacket. It wasn't just someone who looked like me. It was me. But I hadn't been there. I hadn't left the motel all day. I played the video 20 times, frame by frame, looking for signs it was doctored. But it wasn't. The date matched. The store was real. The time matched. And the man, me, even rubbed his face with the back of his hand the exact way I do when I'm thinking. And suddenly, the floor fell out beneath me. Because if I hadn't been there, who the hell had? I called the store, asked to speak to the cashier, said I thought I'd lost something there the day before and wanted to know if anyone had turned in a phone. Just a ruse. But the guy remembered me. Oh yeah, he said. You were acting kinda weird. Asked about a book on disappearances and then just left. I hung up without saying another word. That night, I called Lynette. First time in weeks. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail. I know what's going on, I said. And if you're part of it, if this is some sick game, just stop. Please. I didn't sleep. Again. The next morning, there was a letter taped to my motel door. No name. No address. Just a folded piece of paper that looked like it had been printed from an old typewriter. It read, "You think this is about her. But it was never about her. It's about you. And what you left behind." That was all. I looked around the lot. No cars running. No footsteps. Nothing. I knocked on the front office. Asked the woman if anyone had seen who left it. She shook her head. No one's been here since 10. I went back to my room, shut the curtains, turned on the lights, and sat down to breathe. To think. To try and put the last 6 months of my life in order. And then I realized something chilling. I hadn't just seen the man who looked like me at the bookstore. I'd seen him before. Weeks ago. In the background of a selfie Lynette had posted on her story. Just a blurry figure reflected in the glass of a cafe window behind her. At the time, I assumed it was me. That she'd taken it during our final meeting. But it couldn't have been. Because I was facing her the entire time. I never sat by the window. I never looked away. And yet, he was there. Watching both of us. From the outside. He was watching me. Which means this has never just been about an affair. It's about being replaced. One detail at a time. And if that's true, then someone isn't just copying my habits. They're preparing to erase me. I didn't eat for 2 days. I sat in that motel room with Barley curled in the corner, watching me like he knew something was wrong, but couldn't do anything to help. I stopped answering calls, turned off location services, deleted every app. I even put duct tape over the camera on my laptop. Not because I thought it would stop anything, but because it gave me the illusion of control. The man who looked like me, walked like me, moved like me, haunted every reflection, every passing stranger on the street, every window. I was unraveling, but for the first time, I knew it. And then I hit bottom. It was a Thursday morning, cold light coming in through broken blinds. Barley was meowing, loudly, relentlessly. I told him to stop. He didn't. He just kept yowling, pacing back and forth across the bed, knocking over an empty water bottle, scratching at the door. That's when I noticed it. I hadn't changed his litter in days. I hadn't fed him properly. I hadn't even noticed. I dropped to the floor, hugged him tight, and cried. Not because of the paranoia. Not because of Lynette. Not because of the copycat in the hoodie. But because somewhere along the way, I'd stopped seeing myself as someone worth saving. That morning, I took a shower. A real one. Shaved. Clean clothes. I found a vet and got Barley checked out. He was healthy. Just confused. Just worried. Like me. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I called my mom. She answered on the second ring, breathless like she'd been hoping I would. "Hi," I said. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't ask what happened. She just said, "Come home." So I did. She lived 2 towns over in a little blue house with peeling shutters and a porch swing that hadn't been leveled since 2004. But it was warm, and quiet, and safe. I stayed there for 3 weeks. I walked barefoot in the backyard, sat under the oak tree I used to climb, let my phone die, wrote in notebooks, read real books, played cards with my mom in the evenings, and let barley stretch out on the sunny windowsill without fear. The world didn't stop, but the noise did. One morning, I opened my inbox for the first time in weeks. There was a single message. From Lynette. No subject line. Just this. I don't know what I thought I wanted, but I know it wasn't this. I hope you're safe. I hope you find your way back to yourself. That was it. No manipulation. No apology. Just a quiet wish from someone who was lost too. I didn't respond, but I did smile. Because she was right. It was never about her. Not really. It was about the pieces of me I gave away too freely. To her, to Darren, to paranoia, to obsession. And the journey of collecting them back, one painful step at a time. Months passed. I got a job in a local bookstore. Quiet work. Honest. I started volunteering at the library on weekends, helping kids pick out graphic novels and paperbacks too heavy for their backpacks. I bought a used camera and started taking photos again, not of people, but of light and color and movement. I even developed my own little gallery wall. And one afternoon, as I was hanging a print of a tree branch bending in the wind, I caught my reflection in the glass. Not the man in the hoodie. Not the hollow-eyed version of myself from the motel. Just me, Emery Gordon Fields. A little older, a little scarred, but real, and still here.